Seniors will now come to order. All right, Madam Clerk, would you please call for the roll? Take the roll, please.
Chair Young.
Present.
Representatives Coffia. Present. Glanville. Here. Arbit. Edwards. Present. McDonald. Present. Wozniak.
Here.
Fox.
Yes, ma'am.
Johnson.
Yes.
Thompson. Madam Clerk, you have a quorum.
Thank you. We now need a motion to approve the minutes from our May 9th meeting. All right, Representative Kofia. Okay. Okay, so we have two bills that we already heard testimony on the last time we met on May 9th. We're looking at our bills from Senators Irwin and the Moose on the Guardian Assistance Program. And, yeah. Representative Kofia moves to report Senate Bill 137 with recommendation. Madam Clerk, will you call for the roll?
Chair Young.
Yes.
Representatives Coffia.
Yes.
Glanville.
Yes.
Arbit. Edwards.
Yes.
McDonald.
Yes.
Wozniak.
Yes.
Fox.
Yes, ma'am.
Johnson.
Yes.
Thompson. Madam Clerk, you have 8 yeas, no nay, no pass. Senate Bill 137 is reported with recommendation.
Thank you. Next, we have Representative Edwards moves to report Senate Bill 138 with recommendation. Madam Clerk, will you call for the roll?
Chair Young.
Yes.
Representatives Coffia.
Yes.
Glanville.
Yes.
Arbit. Edwards.
Yes.
McDonald.
Yes.
Wozniak.
Yes.
Fox.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Thompson. Madam Clerk, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays, 0 pass. Senate Bill 138 is reported with recommendation.
Excellent. Thank you all for that. Now, today, we're going to hear some testimony. Testimony on our House Bills 4085, 86, and 87. These bills will address problems with our youth who are homeless. We will hear from the bill sponsors, Representative Stone, Representative Roth, and Representative O'Neill. Representatives, feel free to come forward.
Good morning, Madam Chair.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you for taking up House Bills 4085 through 4087. These are a package of bills to create common sense solutions that address challenges encountered while working to protect some of Michigan's most vulnerable youth. This legislation resulted from the work of the Poverty and Homelessness Caucus, Youth Homelessness Subcommittee. Last term, the caucus guest speakers provided insights for legislators about the unique needs of homeless youth in Michigan. Providers recognized several gaps that resulted from current policies. With some research, we discovered several solutions that can be implemented in order to provide better care for homeless youth. House Bill 4085 would extend the window for homeless youth shelters to secure permission from parents or guardians from the current time limit of 24 hours to align with federal guidance of up to 72 hours. Homeless youth are opting to couch surf or live on the streets rather than enter a formal youth shelter because if permission cannot be secured from a parent or guardian within the narrow window of 24 hours, the shelter must notify Child Protective Services and turn the minor over to their care. Rather than enter the CPS system, many youth opt for self-determination that unfortunately can also come with very real risks of exploitation and even human trafficking. I'll leave the deeper explanation of implications to the providers that are the safety net for these protections for homeless youth.
Thank you, Representative Stone. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Chairwoman, excuse me. I hope I said that right. And all the committee members, thank you for hearing our testimony today. My bill specifically would update the definition of the purpose of transitional housing to specific ages 17 through 21 in order to align with the federal guidelines. In 2018, there was a change made in the state's licensing for providers serving age groups that need to be segregated. However, transitional housing services are permitted under federal guidelines for that 17 to 21 years of age. Contracts for transitional service providers can no longer serve the 17 to 21-year-olds age group under the new Michigan current law. The definition needs to be remedied in statute with HB 4086. Our goal is to make sure all ages can go somewhere safe to be helped. I think a lot of people in northern Michigan don't quite understand what we deal with downstate. This is not necessarily the same situation you'd have upstate. So I know police officers have come forward with this to try and make sure we get kids off the street, especially on the weekends where there's more stuff already going on. Can we get the youth into a safe place for over the weekend at least? So I appreciate the opportunity to testify and happy to answer any questions when we're done if we can.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to speak before you today. Rep. Stone has summed up these bills quite nicely, but there are a few things that I need to reiterate. This package of bills allows youth who are specified in who are in specific and difficult situations to receive the care that they need. We can all agree that each family, home, and individual is unique. Some people are born into loving and understanding homes, and some sadly aren't as fortunate. The reality is sometimes kids are more responsible than their caretakers and have to take care of the adults and the responsibilities of an adult. It may not be the case in your household, but it is the case in other Michigan households. I know some of you may be thinking we already have emancipation laws that will allow emancipated minors the option to receive medical care without consent. And it is true, we do, but unfortunately not all children can be emancipated. Michigan law requires a child to be at least 16 years old for emancipation. This means children under the age of 16 cannot establish the same independence and secure a waiver for parental consent as an emancipated kid. The bill package before us grants grace and the ability for youth to waive consent of parents without emancipation. Without bills like the ones we have before us today, children would not be able to advocate for themselves and their needs. These bills give them that opportunity, Madam Chair, and I encourage your consideration for support. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have one question for Representative Stone. Could you share with us, because it's always good, people go back and listen to this testimony, could you share with us how you all landed at the 72 hours? We want to be clear about that.
Yeah, and the providers will dig into more what their challenges from their end, but the federal guidance is that they have access to up to 72 hours. Sometimes it can be a struggle to have access to the parents. A lot of times that the circumstances youth leave under might be very volatile and need for de-escalation period.
And if I can add, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Unfortunately, a lot of these kids don't have the parents that are truly engaged to even be part of this. It's sad, but we do have to look at that aspect also.
Yeah, understood. Okay. Representative Thompson?
Hi, thank you. This question could be for any one of you. So on the opposite side of that coin, so I understand that we have many parents that aren't that involved in the children offending for themselves, or the teenagers are. But with the reverse side of that coin, if you had a child that was insubordinate or rebellious, thank you, and they run away from home. What does that look like? So say a child who is 15 years old runs away from home and you are not able to get in touch with their parents, or what if that child were not to give you the information to contact their parent? Actually, let me go back. What does it look like if a 15-year-old were to come into a homeless to get shelter and said, I don't have any parents, or my parents are out of town, or how do you prove that? How do you get in contact with the parents?
Yeah.
And what would that look like if the parent says, no, they need to get back home, they just don't want to follow the rules? In
Great
those
question.
situations,
Because
what does that look like?
That is one that a lot of people have. And again, I will defer to the providers who can speak to more accurately what it is they're experiencing on a daily basis. But as the current system, these providers have 24 hours to receive permission. And if they don't, within that 24-hour period, that child is remanded to Child Protective Services. Some of the challenges are they might not currently be residing with a legal guardian or parent. So they have to figure out who and where those parents and guardians are. Do they have a current contact information? Sometimes they have to work around work schedules. And so if someone's on the clock, 8-hour, 12-hour shift, then that cuts into a 24-hour window. And so my explanation is not nearly as eloquent as what they can address. And so that hopefully gets at the heart of what you're looking for. Okay.
Representative Edwards.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a question. I guess either of you can answer it. As an individual who used to work with children aging out of foster care, this bill doesn't speak to just foster care kids. It's for youth in general, correct?
Exempts any youth that are in the foster care system currently and juvenile justice.
Okay, so can you elaborate on what transitional homes is?
I'm sorry. That does include, yes, kids within the system. Each of these bills tackles a slightly different problem within the umbrella. So transitional housing for that purpose is youth who are in the system who are not in the care of their parent or guardian, who are preparing to be independent adults and need the additional wraparound services in order to develop that skill set.
Okay, so when I was doing SIO, which is children aging out of foster care, we provided homes for them where they would go and they would pay their monthly stipend. Do we no longer have those homes?
You're talking about group homes?
They're like independent living homes. Like, it's not a group home. You may live with a relative, you may live with a foster parent, but do we not have those homes anymore?
I'm going to defer to the very specific segment of population that cares for these youth.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, Madam Chair, that might let them speak to, this might address some of the questions.
Yes, I got it. Well, then, we have a couple of more, so we'll see where we get with that. Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Let's be mindful that some of those technical questions we're gonna save for folks outside of our bill sponsors. She's like, uh-oh.
Well, this might be one of those, I'm not sure. But if you can answer any part of it, we'll shed light on it today. Appreciate your concern, and we've got so many needs in the culture we are currently in, and we need to address them. It looks like the attempt is there to help fill gaps. If we could tighten it up or give us understanding, who's investigating them in that gap where the parents are not involved, they don't know what's happening, they don't know where their kids are. You can see where I'm going with this. You've got the kids that legitimately are in horrible situations. Mm-hmm. They need to escape. They need a safe place. And then you've got, which largely the history of our whole country has been, they run to the church first, and they find a church family to help them. That has been the history of America. And it still is today. But how does that investigation go? Or maybe you don't know.
Right. We're gonna save that. Do you want us to save that for the providers? We'll do just that. Thank you, Representative.
I don't want to offer misinformation.
Correct.
Yeah.
Got
Okay,
it.
thank you. Representative Glanville.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for being here today and for offering up this very important legislation that addresses this, what looks like a little gap for these kiddos who, might get overlooked in some areas. I just wanted a little clarification around the ages. I heard our colleague mention an example with a 15-year-old. I'm looking through this and I see in 4085, the definition is 16 to 21, potentially 22 if they are 21 when they enter and turn 22. So we're talking about kids between the age of 16 and 21 essentially for 4085. Is that correct?
I'll defer to the providers to
Oh,
talk
okay.
about the populations that they work with.
So I'm okay, but that's where I feel like I need some clarification.
So there is we're working on a substitute
Oh, okay.
to separate, because there's
Okay.
currently a definition for runaway youth,
Yep.
which is under 18. And then there's also a more specific definition that will be moved into 4086.
Yep,
to
and I was looking at that
specifically
one.
deal with transitional housing.
Okay,
Yeah.
because that one it looks like it deals with 18 to 21. So I just wanted some clarification around the ages here, and maybe that will come with the sub that I don't know that we have. Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
And lastly, Representative Wozniak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for presenting these. So the first one's a technical question. I don't expect you guys to have the answer. But how does this interplay with due process according to the Constitution? And how does it interplay with emancipation, which is the Michigan laws? Any answers? You want to volunteer them, or I'll wait till we have somebody else?
Our providers have thank you. Better guidance, legal guidance for what they do.
All right. John?
I'm not a lawyer, Doug, you know that.
Yeah, I know
So,
that.
Professionals would be better answering that question.
Yeah. So my other question is, what if the parents show up and want to take the child from this safe place? What are the rules there? Can they take them?
So the first, correct me if I'm wrong. First line is permission, right? So if the child does not have permission to be there, then they leave with a parent or guardian. And they can talk about more. I mean, if you're talking about issues of safety, that's something separate that's going into Child Protective Services, right?
Yeah, because I could see some confrontations developing face-to-face like that. But thank you anyway.
Well, that might be a question for the providers, if they've seen that, Doug, too.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
That will be Representative Doug when he's up.
Representative Wozniak, please.
There you go.
Sorry.
No, look,
Woz.
thank you all so much for your testimony. Next up, we would like to bring forward Mr. Ben Moe, Executive Director of DOCHIS and President of Michigan Network for Youth and Families. There he is. That's who we've been pointing at and looking at. Come on up here and help us out. Thank you so much for joining us on today.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the opportunity. I'm hoping that I can, in my support of these bills in question, answer some of the questions that have been raised already, as well as provide some clarity and information. So, the Michigan Network for Youth and Families is a network organization comprised of 20 separate programs across the state of Michigan, all serving runaway and homeless youth. So we cover all areas of the state, from very urban areas that you may have heard of to very rural areas, from the Traverse City area to the very southeast corner of the state where my program serves in Monroe County, Hillsdale, Barry, many rural areas, portions of the UP, and everywhere in between. So we are here in support of these bills, and I'll try to keep myself on track between my notes and the questions that have already been raised here. So 4085, increasing the time of consent to 72 hours. That is really crucial for our programs. And I'd like to point out the goal of, I would say, all of our programs, though our policies may vary slightly differently from program to program, is that we want that consent immediately, but that is not always possible. In most cases, that consent is obtained before a youth enters programming or services or shelter. But in those cases where that parent is not able to be located because the family is experiencing crisis, the family is transient, they're not always in the same place, phones are turned on and turned off almost on a day-to-day basis, it's not possible to contact that parent in that time. So we're forced under the current law of harboring a runaway, which is illegal, or turning that youth out to the streets where they have nowhere to go, or turning them over to Child Protective Services. To speak to 4086 and to clarify some questions, under the current law and interpretation of that law, we ran into an issue specifically with our homeless youth over the past couple of years, where in the definition of a minor for foster care or child protective services involved youth, they were included in that definition of a minor. So they were able to be housed in the facilities and the programs that exist. And all of those programs for aging out of foster care youth still exist. However, our homeless youth were not part of that definition, and that created a very major issue for many of our programs. Gateway here in Lansing, Reach and Traverse Place in Genesee County, Ozone House in Washtenaw, and most recently Family Youth Interventions in Macomb County. Of two of those programs you'll hear from here in a minute after me, where it became a violation of their license to take in that 16 to 21 population that they serve under the same roof, where licensing was saying you can't have a 19-year-old with a 17-year-old, for example, because that's a violation of licensing, because of this simple definition and the way it was being interpreted. So this piece of legislation aims to fix that and would be a huge lift and a huge benefit for these programs that are serving very vulnerable populations. And then 4087, expanding health care for the very same reason that these families are in crisis and are difficult to locate at times, where that at times presents a barrier for that youth in receiving needed care. Again, our goal is to have the parents involved, have the families there as soon as we can. But when we can't, this legislation would allow us to secure needed care for those youth anyway. If we do reach a parent and they don't consent to their youth being in our programs, they're not in our programs, they're returned to the parent, unless child protection law takes over and our mandated reporting comes into play, and then we would be contacting Child Protective Services to intervene with that family. At this time, if there are any additional questions, I would be happy to entertain those.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I have one quick question. When we're talking about contacting the parent, I'm not certain if I saw this anywhere, but what exactly are your methods of contacting? Is there a point during the 24 hours that somebody tries to physically go to the last known address to contact the parents, or are we just relying on telephone numbers, which you clearly said can be on 1 minute and off the next?
That's going to vary by a number of factors. Telephone is going to be the first line of communication probably for most programs. And I should point out that in most cases, the parent is probably the person who's contacted our program first. So in that case, we've already got that. But in these cases where a youth is presented by either another adult or themselves, and we need to contact that parent, we're first relying on the youth providing us that contact information. Where can we find mom or dad? If that fails and we're unable to contact that parent, we're still going to use those channels of Child Protective Services, or other schools may have insight into the contact information. My agency spends a lot of time interacting, and a lot of our programming happens in schools. So there's not really any one approach, but we're going to try telephone, we're going to try texting, email if that's our only option. Some programs do have outreach teams that can go to the last known address and knock on the door and see if mom is there. So it's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all, but they're going to take every option available to them to make that happen.
Okay, thank you for that. Representative Glanville.
Thank you, and thank you for clarifying some of those technical pieces. I'm just curious, and this is maybe a little bit outside the scope of this bill, but I'm just wondering, so you're providing like acute triage services for up to 72 hours to try to reconnect the kid with their kid with their home, or provide the medical services they need. What happens after 72 hours?
So 72 hours is just the amount of time that we're asking for to have consent for the youth to participate in the program. Many of these shelter programs are 21-day programs, or in the case of the transitional living programs, 18 months that they can engage in services and be part of services. Outreach services that can last 90 days or more. The 72 hours is just the amount of time we have to get that consent for them to participate in the program.
And if you don't get consent, then they just
Then
get
we would
turned
have
out?
to contact Child Protective Services anyway, and
All right.
let them know we have an unaccompanied minor that needs some sort of
And
intervention.
again, just to clarify these ages, an unaccompanied minor can be a young person up to the age of 22?
So that's the transitional age, and that definition is important for the licensing piece that we're talking
Okay.
about. So an 18, 19-year-old that came into a transitional program can consent for themselves to be there. But it's important for them to be included in the definition of a minor youth so that they can participate in a program with a 17-year-old.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
So I have a follow-up question to Representative Glanville's question. So if we can't find the parents and we don't get consent, and you're saying you have to turn the youth over, is the youth allowed to leave once they find out that they don't necessarily end up within going to CPS?
No, our programs are 100% voluntary, so the youth is not obligated to stay there or be there. We can present those options to them, and they may choose to go somewhere else where they know somebody. And this is going to look very different depending on the region, but many of our youth are couch surfing or doubled up with people, and so they'll find a place to be that night that's not part of the system.
Okay, because I'm wondering if there are organizations, agencies that work with this population, if they left one after spending 3 days, could they just go to another, or do the organizations communicate?
We try to, yes. And that actually is an issue that's come up over a number of years of organization hopping, quote unquote, where they not necessarily they don't get the consent and so they leave, but they expend a lot of time that the program contracts allow, and then they move on to another organization. So we've spent a lot of time as a network, as well as through our state contract manager, in addressing that issue and providing clarity so that doesn't happen as frequently.
I mean, I don't know if I don't want it to happen yet or not. I'm still learning. Because because I don't know. We're dealing with youth who potentially are in some real dangerous situations.
And it's better that and so the ways that we've addressed it is to try to contain the youth in the same program and allow variances to keep them there either longer than the contracting generally specifies, or to get other services involved, because it's going to be better for them to have that consistency than it is going to be to, for example, I used to work in Kalamazoo, so a youth might leave that shelter and go to Grand Rapids.
Right.
And then 12 weeks later, we see them back at our door because they're just kind of bouncing around. And so we want to provide the stability for long-term stability for those families.
Yeah, that's what's needed.
Yeah.
Representative Thompson?
Yes. Regarding House Bill 4087, allows homeless runaway youth healthcare access without parental consent. Then when I'm looking into the description, it's saying that the homeless or runaway youth would have to show accessible or have access to documentation as defined by something signed by a director or designee. So if the package of bills is looking to give a longer window to be able to get a hold of the parent, so within the 72 window, what would adding this bill to the package, what type of health care access are we looking for children within a 72-hour window? Obviously, it's a little concerning that someone 16 or 17 could have access to health care without their parents' knowledge.
Again, I think the intent is, I know the intent for our programs is to get the parents involved as quickly and as soon as possible. When there are those barriers, the parent's phone is turned off, the whatever it is that's presenting a barrier that that parent is not contactable and the youth is having an urgent medical concern, say a bladder infection that needs treatment as soon as possible.
Wouldn't they go to the ER and receive?
They could, but they need to receive, they need consent to receive that care under, eventually there's going to be a point where a parent is needed and that parent is not reachable and they're going to be denied care. This is getting a little bit out of my realm because I'm not the medical provider,
Yeah.
but under this legislation, I could certify that yes, this youth is homeless and these are the circumstances of which their parent cannot be present.
Would this allow for an abortion
No, I did see that in the bill that's specifically stated.
That's correct.
in the bill?
Yes,
It's not, I mean, it will not allow for that.
it would not allow for it. It is stated in the
Right,
bill.
but when we look at situations like a child who's asthmatic,
Mm-hmm.
who left a dangerous situation quickly, but now needs an inhaler or may need,
exactly,
right,
yes.
a nebulizer or some, a breathing treatment. I have an asthmatic in my family. We wouldn't need that
diabetic
child to be able to get
supplies,
that. Yeah,
another
insulin.
example, yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Representative Wozniak?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your testimony, sir. When you have a minor show up with a child, what is your process for that?
That is a very tricky one. Most of us are not licensed to provide care for that child, so it's kind of all hands on deck to figure out.
But you would
the
handle somebody with a pregnancy, correct? No?
Explain what?
If the minor comes in and she's pregnant,
Yes,
she could qualify for the 72 hours, right?
correct.
Okay, but if she comes in with a child, does she qualify for that, or do you have to refer her to a longer-term program?
The child herself would qualify for the 72 hours, but the child of the child, we're not licensed to care for, or our programs aren't designed to care for. So we would have to either involve Child Protective Services or some other qualified program or partner to help provide care for that.
Have you experienced that yet?
Oh, many times, yes.
Okay, so normally Child Protective Services?
If it was appropriate, if there's a child care mandated reporting or child care law being broken, then yes, we have to contact Child Protective Services. In my experience, many times what happens is you've got, say, a 17-year-old with a baby, things blow up at home, they leave. They want to come into shelter, so they find grandma or aunt or somebody like that to care for their baby while they're in shelter, and we figure out what their long-term plan is.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony today. We got to keep it moving. We've got a number of people wanting to testify. And so with that, next up, we'll hear from Spencer Calhoun. We'll hear from Spencer Calhoun, Comprehensive Youth Services Board Member, former transitional home resident. Thank you so much for joining us today, Spencer.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
My name is Spencer Calhoun, and I'm a formerly homeless youth. I've been served by Common Grounds Basic Homeless Youth Shelter, as well as Family Youth Intervention's Transitional Living Program, where I was a resident for 9 months. Since leaving the Transitional Living Program, I've had the privilege of becoming a board member for Comprehensive Youth Services, which is the parent organization for Family Youth Interventions. My experiences in this program are what motivated me to get more involved in the community and to advocate for other homeless youth. I first want to thank Representative Stone, O'Neill, and Representative Roth for sponsoring these bills, and I want to thank the chair and all the members, some of you who I'm proud to know. So I understand fully the need for these bills because I have been homeless. 4085, for instance, will give runaway shelters to 72 hours to obtain the parental permission. I recently spoke to a young person who was in a crisis who felt that they weren't safe at home. They felt that their only option was to escape the situation and to go to a shelter. But the issue that arose was they realized that soon after they would arrive at the shelter, their guardian or their parent would be called, and they were sure that that would make the situation worse very quickly. So after speaking to them, I immediately called Representative Stone and asked her what could be done to help young people in this situation. And she introduced me to this bill, which will make a huge impact because it provides a cooling period for parents and guardians and a homeless or runaway youth. It also gives staff with basic shelters more time to create a plan of action for the youth that will hopefully end in some sort of safety and stability. House Bill 4086 will address the transitional living programs that are housing 16 and 17-year-olds with 18 to 21-year-olds. This legislation will allow youth up to age 21 to be identified as a minor for the purposes of licensing. You already know this part. But this bill in particular is very important to me because I came into the transitional living program when I was 17. At the time, there were other youth in the program who were over 18. So currently, without this bill, if I were to go into this program at age 17, I might have been turned away. And quite frankly, I don't know where I would have ended up had that happened. And then finally, 4087 will allow unaccompanied homeless youth the ability to consent for their own medical care and treatment. Prior to becoming a homeless youth, I hadn't been to the doctor in years. Within days of joining the TLP program, I was seen by a doctor. Currently, minors cannot consent to the vital basic medical care that they may need, and that raises the risk of illness and disease. Homeless youth are also vulnerable to a number of threats, including physical issues and mental health challenges that require swift and quality health care. So as you can see, it's absolutely critical that the legislature pass these bills and give homeless youth the tools that they need to succeed and grow. So I want to thank you all for this opportunity to support these bills, and I hope to see them passed into law as soon as possible.
Thank you so much for your testimony today. You know, the experiences of those, many of us have not walked in your shoes. And so it's so important for us to hear from you and to hear how you consider this legislation, good legislation, to help other youth experiencing, youth homelessness and just wanting to do better, to have some peace when you come home after school. I understand that. I do have a question for you, Spencer. Is it okay to call you Spencer? You want to be Mr. Calhoun? Which one you want?
I'm Spencer.
Spencer, so when you talked about the first bill, you talked about the importance of having a cooling off period. And so I just want to be certain what your understanding of this legislation is, because to my understanding, sometimes we can't reach the parent within the first 24 hours, though we're trying to. And I want to be certain that it's not that we start to try to look for them after 24 hours. I mean, if we find the parent within the first 24 hours, that's not much of a cooling off period. So what were you thinking when you said that?
Well, I'm looking at this from the perspective of a homeless youth.
Mm-hmm.
If it's going to take a little bit more time to find that parent,
Okay.
you have the time to really calm down and figure out what you're going to do that you wouldn't have if this bill wasn't passed. So I'm looking at it from that perspective more than the perspective of someone who is looking for that parent.
Okay. Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your testimony. How do you handle it when you are able to find the parent right away and they want their child back? What do you do then?
He's not a provider.
Right. That's not a question.
He doesn't
for him.
know the answer. Okay.
We'll wait for a provider.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no further questions. Thank you again, Spencer. Bless you, sweetheart. Next, is this our virtual, is this our Kirsten? Mhm. She's not on yet?
But she might be here.
All right, so let's just check and see. Is Kirsten Murphy? No? 'Cause we had her up next, no problem. We'll go ahead and see if we can hear from Heather Brown. Do we have Heather Brown? Is that Heather on Zoom?
Hi, everyone.
There she
Good
is. Heather Brown, she's the Director of Program Operations and Services at Ozone House. Thank you, Heather, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon, members of Families, Children, and Seniors Committee. I am the Director of Program Operations here at Ozone House in Ypsilanti, Michigan, where we serve young people experiencing homelessness, primarily unaccompanied youth between the ages of 10 and 24. Homelessness is a serious problem affecting Michiganders and unfortunately youth. The most recent data from the National Center for Homeless Education shows that 26, are you able to hear me all right? Okay, it's going in and out of muting. Okay. The most recent data from the National Center for Homeless Education shows that 26,867 school-aged youth were homeless throughout Michigan. This is a staggering number. Our shelter staff received extensive training on issues related to caring for youth in a residential setting. How to identify and care for youth who are at risk of trafficking or have been trafficked. They provide trauma-informed care and the principles and practices of positive youth development. Our team provides educational support to ensure that youth continue to experience as normal a school experience as possible, even while staying in the shelter, which often means things like coordinating rides to and from school and helping with homework. On top of counseling and case management, our staff guide youth in recreational activities that provide a safe space for youth to apply the skills they are learning in the shelter, such as decision-making, cooperation, maintaining boundaries, conflict resolution, and improving self-esteem. The bills before you will increase safety for these unaccompanied young people. I specifically would like to address 4085. Right now, youth under the age of 18 cannot consent to their own shelter, and we must get a parent or guardian consent within 24 hours. Because of this, in cases where youth cannot return home to a safe and supportive environment and their parents do not immediately give consent or cannot be located in time, youth may end up experiencing homelessness. This bill will get us closer to the federal standard of 72 hours to get that consent, which allows our staff more time to navigate the dynamic between the minor youth and the family, and more time simply to get in contact and get consent. So I just wanted to give you just two quick examples of how this 24-hour deadline can impact our ability to serve young people. I had a young person walk in yesterday, and she is 17. She has been homeless, which for her meant couch surfing, sleeping outside, here and there, for over a year. When I asked her for her parent or guardian's phone number to call because we needed to get consent, she said, well, I have a phone number. It's my mom's boyfriend. I don't know if it still works, and I haven't talked to my mom in over a year. So I called, and I did get the boyfriend, who did give me the mom, but the mom lives in Jacksonville, Florida. And the first thing she said to me is, what? My daughter is in Michigan? So getting consent in this situation in 24 hours, you can see that this is going to be really difficult. Another situation involved a young person that lived in a city in like the middle of Michigan and rode their bike 22 miles to Frankenmuth, where they got picked up, and eventually made it down to Ypsilanti. They fled their home because their family did not accept their identity, and they were afraid of what was happening in their home. They did not want us to call their mom, but had another guardian in another state in the South. We spent 24 hours trying to coordinate with this young person's father, who lived in a trailer without electricity and just had a cell phone. We were trying to send the consent forms to the library so he could print them. It never worked. And time was taking away. We eventually had to use the remaining time to contact the mother in Michigan and convince her to consent for her child to stay with us while we could work on reunification with them and provide a safe space for that young person to get support and to work with the family to help support that young person. There are other situations where we can't get support and the young person never even shows up. And, they just continue to couch surf or, find other places to stay. So like all of you, we want to make sure youth in crisis find safety and support, and these bills will help frontline social safety net organizations keep more young people safe. Thank you for your time, and I hope you will all vote in favor of these bills.
Thank you so much for your testimony on today, for reminding us of just some of the things that our young people go through and why it's necessary for us to try to find solutions that work for all of us. Any members have any questions for Ms. Brown? Okay. Well, with that saying none, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And now, do we have Ms. Kirsten Murphy? Is Ms. Murphy available yet? She's the next person that we have for testimony? No? Okay. Then let's go to Jolene Barrack. Is Ms. Jolene here? Jolene, Director of RHY Programs at the Family Youth Intervention Center. She's on Zoom. There she is. Thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thank you. Kristen was not able to attend today, so you can remove her from the list. She will not be joining us. Thank you, Representative Stone, and to the entire committee for the opportunity for me to be able to speak to you today, specifically around 4086. Thank you, Ben from MNYF, for the summary and overview of our programs, and also to Spencer, not violating any confidentiality because he self-disclosed. I worked with Spencer in our programs through Family Youth Interventions program, so he is a shining example of one of our success stories. So again, my name is Jolene Bark, and I am the Director of Runaway and Homeless Youth Services for Comprehensive Youth Services. I serve Macomb, St. Clair, Sanilac, and Huron counties. I operate 2 transitional living programs, one in Macomb County and the other in St. Clair County, both which are licensed child caring institutes, serving 16 through 20-year-olds in a congregate setting. So both of these programs have been in operation for more than 25 years of combined experience. Our 2 TLPs in Macomb and St. Clair counties, again, have maintained full license compliance with the CCI rules for, again, more than 2 decades, until August of 2021, when the interpretation of PA 116 prohibited our programs from providing access to safe housing for the population that we have served for decades. PA 116 includes the definition specific to 4086 of youth and or a minor, again, of which our programs have served ages 16 through 20 in a congregate setting since we opened our doors, and haven't ever been found in non-compliance throughout the years of site visits and renewals of our Child Caring Institute license. We were then informed we were not allowed to serve these populations in the same facility. So Michigan's licensing rules for child caring institutes have interpreted the legal definition of a minor that does not include young people who qualify for a transitional living program under federal law. This gap has precipitated real problems for our organization and is directly impacting the safety of the youth that we serve. Not only does this issue potentially impact our funding on both federal and state levels, moreover, it has directly impacted the safety of our youth by limiting their access to safe and supportive housing. This issue also increases the likelihood that our youth are more vulnerable to trafficking, physical and sexual abuse, and homelessness, and many more traumatic experiences. Someone on the committee had brought up emancipation, and I've been working with at-risk runaway and homeless youth for almost 30 years now, and have yet to, in my career, experience a successful emancipation. The emancipation laws are extremely strict and basically unachievable by anyone under the age of 18. So I just want to make that kind of clear. So in the definition of a minor, when we're talking about that, specific to the 72-hour permission and the access to medical care, is primarily focused on youth under the age of 18. When we're dealing with the definition of a youth or a minor for 4086, That's including service provision from 16 through 21. So again, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity for me to speak with you today, and I appreciate your support and your consideration.
Thank you so much for your testimony and letting us know about all the great work that you guys are doing and helping us understand why it's still really important to find a way to address these concerns.
Yes.
Are there any questions from the committee? You can, Representative Thompson, go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you.
Johnson.
That's okay. Thank you for being here. First of all, how do youth find out about the programs?
Fortunately, a lot of our referrals to the programs are from youth to youth, so word of mouth. We do actively engage our young people with outreach teams where youth are gathering, as well as social media.
Okay, thank you. And what are the specific criteria that qualifies a youth to be there and not send them back home?
Right. So for our transitional living program, they need to be what we call the definition of homeless as defined by the McKinney-Vento. So they do not have safe and stable housing. For whatever reason, they may not be able to return to their home of origin. They may not have access to an aunt, uncle, grandparents, or whatnot that are willing and or able to care for them. They need to be willing to participate. As I believe Ben had mentioned, we're a voluntary program. So they cannot be a systems kid, like no juvenile justice, no child protective services involvement, willing to participate, and then they have 18 months in that program to be able to work towards self-sufficiency.
And one last question. What happens if the parents are reachable and they want to come pick their child back up? How do you decide which way to go on something like that?
Primarily when we're looking at the parental permission piece, more often than not, we get child protective services involved for the under 18s because it's just not safe. Most parents, however, are willing to allow the youth to access the services.
So CPS are the investigators in that situation? Right, okay, thanks.
Right. More often than not, is a safety issue for the youth.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I don't see any other questions. With that, we'll begin. We have one more person who wants to provide in-person testimony, Catherine Boussard. Feel free to come forward. Do you have any written testimony for us?
I already distributed it.
Okay, very good. Thank you for joining us today. You'll have 1 to 2 minutes, please, because we're running out of time.
I'll try and go quickly. I'm so grateful for the Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to share, distinguished chair and distinguished members of this committee. You have copies of my written testimony, and I just want to say this is a very important issue. My parents spent many years in social work at Sunnycrest Youth Ranch and then later at the Women and Children's Rescue Mission in downtown Lansing. And I have also seen many stories that are heartbreaking, but I've also seen success stories. And I want to make sure that we fully consider some of the language and how it applies to the vast variety of situations here. Particularly in House Bill 4087, the term safe environment isn't really defined, but it does say that a child who is deemed homeless or runaway has not necessarily experienced abuse or child neglect. And so for children who might be running away for other reasons that might come from a good, loving home, we want to make sure that the parents have every opportunity to remain involved, that there's every opportunity for reunification and those best case scenarios, and that we are doing the very best that we can for that child's needs. And I also want to make sure, because this is such an important law, that it's not passed in a way that instantly would be enjoined for some constitutional reason. And I've provided in my testimony a list of several U.S. Supreme Court cases that cause parental rights to be considered as a fundamental right, which is a very different legal threshold. And it's important that we make sure that we allow those protections, as well as stay in accordance with, I believe it's MCL 380.10, that also protects the fundamental rights of parents to direct the care and upbringing of their child in those healthy situations, while making sure that we have really good solutions for all of those children in crisis situations that are just heartbreaking. And this law is too important to be stymied by a constitutional debate when we need to find real solutions. And I'd also urge that in crisis situations, or when a child shows up, sometimes a child might say a number of things, but for the very young children, those that might be under 16 that could show up and be a part of this bill package, there could be unintended consequences with medical allergies or food allergies, things that a parent might know history of, but that a very young child might not know is dangerous for them. I remember seeing a 6-year-old boy who had run away, was barefoot, had cuts on his feet that had become infected, and penicillin was administered, and it nearly killed him. And thank goodness they had something to stop the reaction on hand. It was horrible. And we want to make sure that those type of situations also don't happen, so that children are truly protected. And there's so many unintended consequences. I just have more concerns, but I really appreciate being here and hearing all the testimony and having some of those questions answered. And I hope to ask more questions at another time when there is time, but I do appreciate the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you. And just know the bill sponsors are here. You feel free to speak to any one of the bill sponsors regarding any suggestions you might have to improve the legislation. We thank you for being here and for your testimony on today.
Thank you so much.
And so next, we're going to go ahead and read in some cards that we have received, so that we're pretty much in pretty good timing here. Wishing to support the bill, Jason Smith, Michigan Center for Youth Justice. In support of the bill, Harrison Glass, Youth Premier Council. In support of the bill, Rod Montz, Schoolhouse, what's that? Convocation? Connection. Schoolhouse Connection. In support of the bill, Lisa Chapman, Michigan Coalition Against Homelessness. In support of the bill, Saginaw Youth Protection Council. In support of the bill, Mike Frederick, Michigan County Social Services Association. In support of the bill, Julie Cassidy, Michigan League for Public Policy. In support of the bill, Jim Perlacki, Reach Traverse Place. In support of the bill, I already did that. In support of the bill, we have Bobby, what's this name? Bobby Doringo James, perhaps? Lord Jesus, where my eyeglasses that I don't wear? Michigan's Children. All right. Do you think that's a Mandy? I thought that's a K. All right. Maddie Prout, P-R-O-U-T, Michigan Federation of Children and Families. Gina Harani? Haranki? Okay, because it looks like a H. Yes. Children's Services of Michigan, of Northwest Michigan. Ooh, thank you, Lord. Monique Carter. Yes, Monique Carter, thank you. Monique Carter, Arbor Circle. In support of the bill, Lisa Chapman, Michigan Coalition Against Homelessness. I think we said that. In support of the bill, Cheryl Kennedy, Strategic Education Plan. And in support of the bill, Kristen Luck, Detroit Phoenix Center. Did we get everybody? We got some were emails. We're going to read those in. Rod Montz, M-O-N-T-S, supports the bills, the package of bills. We have Ingrid Picasso in support of the bills. We have James Downward in support of the bills. We have Jennifer Ebdon. We already read that one in, did we? Yep. Okay, I think we've read in all the bills. Please accept my apologies for massacring some of the names. We'll do our best to read the handwriting. But no, we thank you. We thank you all for this important testimony and legislation brought forward on today. I'm grateful that the committee was here to help us vote out those two bills earlier. And with that,
Are we doing the presentation?
yes.
From
Oh, is she still here? That's what we were rushing. We do have one more presentation. Woo. And there she is, from the Children's Center. So we all know May, there are a number of different awareness months, and May is Foster Care Awareness Month, and we have one final presentation on today from Miss Allen Youngblood. She's with the Children's Center out of Detroit, covering Wayne County. So, Miss Youngblood, would you mind joining us and providing your presentation? Go ahead with your presentation.
Okay, thank you so much for having me, everyone, and the committee members. I'm Shireen Youngblood. I'm from the Children's Center. I've been with the Children's Center for 10 years now, but I've been in child welfare in some form or fashion for over 25 years. So I come with a lot of knowledge, but I would really like to reach out and spend just a few minutes giving you information about foster care and encourage you to help. I know that unfortunately there's never not a time that we don't need foster parents, adoptive parents, or even independent living providers for youth that are for 16 to 21, which we were just kind of talking about as far as with the homeless population. One thing that I know that with teens and thinking about teens, a lot of people think that teens in foster care don't want parents, but the reality is no teenager ever thinks they don't need a parent. They all want one, and we can help provide that by becoming either foster, adoptive parents, or even a host home provider. A lot of times teens in foster care get a bad rap, and they think that they're juvenile delinquents, but most teens in foster care are there for the same reasons younger children are, because someone either abused or neglected them. One thing that we want to do, or really helps us do, by becoming establishing these relationships with children, especially teens, is that it's building a connection, it's supporting them, and it's helping them navigate their lives and developing a lifelong connected and caring situation. One of the things is that a lot of times people's hesitancy about becoming either a provider or a foster parent, adoptive parent to teens, they feel like they don't have any influence over them. But research has shown us that the brain continues to grow all the way up into the mid-20s. So you always have that opportunity to make a positive impact on an older person, and not only helping them grow as a person, but impacting their lives in unexpected ways for a lifetime. So when we think about foster care awareness, when we think about just that this month that concentrating on, there's an intersection that happens. And one of those intersections is that not only is May Foster Care Awareness Month, it is also Mental Health Awareness Month. And so one of the things is that probably 20% of our population struggles with mental illness. However, the statistics for children in child welfare system are staggering. In a study of foster youth aged 16 to 17 years old, a quarter have attempted suicide. The suicide attempt rate for foster youth, especially if they're living in a group home, is 2.6 times higher than the youth living in a foster home. So due to these histories, foster care teens especially need our emotional support, our encouragement during this time, and becoming a responsible adult. So it's really important. One of the other things that I definitely want to say is that, or even a myth that a lot of people have, is that teens have been abused so much they are beyond repair. But one thing we definitely should know is teens are amazingly resilient. Foster parents can make a difference by providing structured, nurturing environments. In addition, we will offer not only that, in addition, the Children's Center and a lot of the child caring agencies or child placing agencies will offer the support and help and training that you need to increase your child care skills, especially for children who are in the foster care system. I know that one of the things that I think is really important, or how much we need adoptive parent, is that recently there was a youth who spent 2,189 days in foster care. So can you imagine if you had 2,189 days, what you would do with it? Would you spend it in foster care? I don't think you would. So that's really important to understand and know that all those days that they spend in foster care, but we can help by being a foster parent. We can help by being an adoptive parent. And again, for our older youth, we can help by being that independent living provider that really sets forth and helps those teens become functioning, successful adults in society. And that's what we're all after. And sometimes people think you have to have parenting experience to be a foster parent or even an adoptive parent, and you do not. While it is helpful, it is not necessary. And we actually provide, the Children's Center of the state of Michigan actually provides actual pre-service classes to help you with that parenting, and it's ongoing for your entire time of being a foster parent, adoptive parent. We're always making sure that you have that information and we get you those resources. One of the other things that I definitely want to discuss is that when we think about how do we do this, it's really relatively simple. As far as becoming an actual foster or adoptive parent, it really first starts with kind of making a phone call, establishing what that agency is that you're going with the Children's Center. Is actually me. I'm your first contact. I definitely, for the most part, will make sure. Our goal is always for you to become either a foster or adoptive parent. We're going to explore those ways in which you become. And yes, we talk about, as far as in the licensing process, what all it entails. And sometimes it can seem overwhelming, but it's really relatively simple. We're just finding out your experiences. And we're also making that determination with those experiences that you have, what best child could fit your home, your station, your life, and also what child, how you can benefit that child. So one of the things I do want you to know, as far as some statistics about children in foster care, and the reason why we need so many foster parents, is that 70% of children in foster care read at a 4th grade level. And that 2% of our teens actually complete a degree, a bachelor's degree. So we want to help our children beat the odds. And by beating the odds, if the more people we have, the more foster parents we have, the more adoptive parents we have, we don't have to see these staggering statistics for our youth. One of the things that I will say is that we want to make sure that we care for our children, and that not only that, we celebrate also those that are foster parents. That's one of the reasons why we have Foster Care Awareness Month, is to also celebrate those families, to support those families, and we celebrate their compassion, their selflessness, and just the never-ending love that they may have.
All right. I know we're running out of time, Ms. Guthrie. This was a long committee. I apologize, because I know how passionate you are about this subject. And we have committee at 1:30. I mean, we have session at 1:30. Are there any quick questions that anyone might have for Ms. Youngblood before we get out of here? Look here, ma'am, we appreciate you. We're probably going to have you come back and spend some more time with us, because those are some staggering statistics that you share with us on today. And then I also always appreciate the fact that you're always recruiting for more foster families, for more foster parents and adoptive parents, because we have babies that need that help. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me again.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And so with that, we don't have any absent members. I don't believe he was here earlier. There being no further business before the Family, Children, and Seniors Committee, we stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone.